Hello everyone. Okay, I think hopefully I'm on the right one. They can't fuck this up twice, right? They can't fuck this one up twice, right? Yeah, okay, we're good. We're good. Wait, what? Hold on, I'm supposed to be live. What the fuck? Start on the wrong one. Oh my gosh. Oh, for fuck's sake. We're just getting the engine started, all right? This is it's still wrong. For fuck's sake. Yeah, thank you, terrible artists, as I try and repair my stream. I don't know what's happening. Streamlabs is fucking up right now. Is this the right one? Is this the right one, terrible artists? Hold on. I keep reloading my fucking. Hold on. I keep re. Yeah, this is the right one. This is the right one. Hold on. As I try and. Yeah, this is the right one. Okay, we're in the right one. It's still wrong. Don't fucking lie to me, all right? This is why I can't. This is why I can't trust you as a mod. Hello, Rez. Okay, we're in the right one. We're in the right one. We started the right engine. Okay. Oh man. Okay. This has been rough already. First I'm like 20 minutes late, then this. Yeah, we're in the right one. Anyway, this has been a topic that I've been your OBS ignores me because it's racist. Yeah, it's racist to Canadians. Fuck off. Hello, Raz. Hey, random perv. Hey, random perv. Anyways, this was a topic that has been. Let me see if I can repair chat. Let's repair chat. Where's that? It is Streamlabs. This is technically Streamlabs. It likes to do that, unfortunately, so I have to like double and triple check. There isn't anything I can really do about it other than it's happened multiple times, so I need to be able to like realize when I can. Um, there we go, chat box. There we go. Okay, I think that's fixed. I think that's fixed. 200,000 bros a B-26 fan. A-26. They redesignated it the B-26 later. We're gonna be talking about. Let's start from the beginning. Okay, this has been a topic that I've been like wanting to cover for a while. Hopefully chat is up. Hopefully chat can work. 200,000 bullets and still misses is sad. But yeah, this is bro's my silly little boy toy. Shut up. Shut up. Why is that the one that comes up on screen? Anyways, so this is a story of an aircraft. Like I guess evidenced by the amount of tabs that I have here, we are doing a more traditional mechanical marvels. This has been a deep dive of an aircraft that I really enjoy, an aircraft that I really love. As some of you may be aware, I am like a big fan of World War II aviation, and one of the parts that I feel like is underrepresented in a lot of media and like a lot of games as well, aside from maybe War Thunder, is the A-26 Invader. This bomber, this is a light bomber that only served at the end of the war, but it served for like 40 years after the end of the war afterwards. This is in short, this was basically like one of the this was the this was the last twin engine propeller bomber ordered by the US Air Force. Ever ordered by the US Air Force. Um this was developed by Douglas as a replacement for the A-20 Havoc. As stated here, the A-20 Havoc was a previous aircraft, which was the immediate predecessor. This is not to be confused with the B-26 Marauder, which was a different one, but it was frequently confused with it because it had the same numerical designation. Um, okay, I'll pull those up. A-20 Havoc. This was these were light bombers. These were American light bombers of the these were American light bombers and medium bombers during the end of near the end of the war. They needed to replace the what is it? The A-20 the A-20. You can see the resemblance here. This is Different nose, but it has a similar layout for the gunner position and the cockpit position. The A-20 Havoc, the B-26 Marauder. This was slightly larger, which by the Martin company. This was slightly larger. A lot of these look similar. A lot of these look similar. Um, there's that. And then finally the B-25 Mitchell, which was another one of my favorite aircraft. Um, Another one of my favorite aircraft, mostly because of the big gun, but it was designed to replace all three of these. You can see like this whole twin engine setup that you have like a recurring thing. Oh, yeah, it's a recurring element for all three of these aircraft. The A-26 was intended to replace all of these. All of these for the attack role, for the bombing role, for the reconnaissance role. It was intended to be a night fighter as well, like a heavy fighter aircraft, but that never materialized for the most part, but it did get some aircraft kills. And this was developed in short, this was developed, first flown in 1942, delivered in 1944, first on the Pacific Front, first on the Pacific Front, and to replace the A-20. Um, Heck, does he squeak when you peg him? No, he whimpers. Just figured you should make noise. Just shut the fuck up, man. But anyways, I do want to I do want to quickly thank this website. This website, the A-26 Invader like website. This is a very old website. This is among others that I have uploaded here. And a lot of thanks to the author. Unfortunately, I did reach out to the author of this website. Unfortunately, he didn't respond, but I wanted to give him a shout out anyway. Mr. Simpson. He's good guy, and he provides a lot of resources that he didn't know about, like even what some of my own favorite aircraft. But like I'm using several different websites for this. But anyway, going back into this. This was very much at the end of the war. Only started appearing in 1944, and this was the last twin-engine propeller bomber ever ordered by the U.S. Air Force or the U.S. Army Air Force before it got changed to the U.S. Air Force. For the most, so this was. Yeah, as you can see, this was like I said, this was near the end of the war. This was first flown in 1942. It was delivered to the Japanese front first, to the Pacific front first, and they didn't like it. They were already attached to the A-20. They were already attached to the A-20 Havoc, and they decided this isn't worth our time. They preferred the Havoc. They were more familiar with it, and they thought it was a decent aircraft, but they had a lot of gripes with it. They didn't like the visibility. Oh yeah, where's that? Against Japan, where's I had that section somewhere here. A-26 against Germany. Yeah, A-26 against Japan. This is the first one. They had to make a lot of changes to satisfy the crews over in Japan. Over in the Pacific. This was used to liberate the Philippines. This was used to use against Japanese on Okinawa, Taiwan, and mainland Japan. These were not popular in the Pacific. Ironic for its later deployments, like after the end of the war, but these were not popular in the Pacific because they decided where is that? From the cockpit view, looking outwards from the cockpit view, the engine nacelles, the engine housings were so large that they couldn't really see to either side of the aircraft. You could only really look to the front, and if it had the gun nose instead of the bomb nose, then you couldn't look you can only look directly in front of you. You couldn't look down. So that was a problem for the most part. Visibility was a problem that I guess was an inherent design flaw of the aircraft. but for the most part, it was compact for its like it was relatively compact for its size. It was pretty large, but it was faster than basically all of its predecessors, and it required less crew. We'll get into that in a second. But these were the interiors of the military versions, as you can see here. As you like, it was pretty cramped inside, but they had to make do with the space that they had. This was also one of the first I think U.S. military aircraft to use remote tail gunner positions, remotely operated defensive gunner positions instead of like the guy sitting in the turret. Instead, these were remote control turrets controlled by one gunner. Then this was a crew of three. You had the bombardier, who also was the navigator. You had the pilot, who sat next to the bombardier, and then you had the gunner who was facing backwards, from my recollection. This was the pilot view. This was you would get in from there, and then you would access the cockpit from there, and then gunners and like other crew would sit in the fuselage. There was a lot to these. I do a bad job of explaining it, but there's a lot of these that don't cover this as well as it could. There's a lot of these that cover it a lot better than I do, but most of those resources I am accessing. So you get these. And this was also one of the first attempts at a modular aircraft for the U.S. aircraft. Be right back, baby boy. This was one of the first attempts at a modular aircraft for the U.S. military as well. As you can see, you have either the glass nose. This was the bomb nose. This was equipped with the Norden bomb sight, where you could look down and where is that? Yeah, this could be equipped with the Norden bomb sight. Combine optics and mechanical computer and an autopilot for the first time to not only merely identify a target but fly the airplane to it. This was an early form of mechanical computer, like a semi-autopilot that let the bombardier take control of the aircraft when it would during like particularly important low-level bombing missions or high-level bombing missions as well. Um, yeah, you can see the Norden bomb sight. This was used in a lot of aircraft. You could see that on the B-17, on the B-29. It was also used It was also for use on the A-26 Invader, and where is that? Yeah, there we go. Yeah, these were you could see that so the bomber could look directly down while he's flying the aircraft, so he could take control of the aircraft and bomb the targets he needed. This was before the age of precision bombing, and oh shit, I got some water. Hold on, I'll be real quick about it. Let me go wipe that up. I spilled some water on my computer. But yeah, that Norden bomb sight that could fly you to the target, that could aid you in precision bomb in like some level of precision bombing, which a greater degree of accuracy instead of just carpet bombing like they were in the war before. So it offered like greater accuracy that you could derive from this. But I think my more favorite option for the armament of this aircraft where is that? Yeah, there we go. The gun positions. This was the attacker nose. This was meant for a direct attack against light vehicles, troops, infantry, lightly armored buildings, and this was impressive for its time. So you got 850 cals pointed forward that the pilot could control. Pilot had a holographic gun sight. I think like some kind of reflex sight in the cockpit that was trained on these. These were directed straight forward. You could strafe ground targets. You could open fire and all like all of these were these weren't useful against tanks, but they were against basically light vehicles, trucks, that sort of thing. You could take out basically anything you wanted as long as it had an open top. And yeah, it's 650 cals. This was a seriously impressive gun armament, especially for an attacker or a bomber. This like for the war, this was comparable to the P-47 to the P-47, and I think and there were a few other aircraft, but they weren't necessarily meant for attacking as much as the A-26 was. And again, this was seriously impressive for its time. It was, I just love this, man. This big profile. They had 8 guns pointed at you, staring down the barrels, staring down 8 barrels, and then they used the B-29 in Indiana Jones movie where the Nazi gets ripped up by the propeller. That was a different aircraft. That was a fictional flying wing aircraft. It didn't exist, but it was based on some real world designs. But this one was intended to replace the B-25 Mitchell, and early on, early on in the war, yeah, let's look at this. Early on in the war, they had the idea of fitting the gun from the M4 Sherman tank onto this aircraft. They almost did. There were several mountings for it, and these were like they did try to convince them to use it operationally. A 37 millimeter cannon port side. I think this is the 37 mil, and the 75 on this side, on the starboard side. So this was trialed because the immediate predecessor, the A-25, the B-25 Mitchell, did have a gun nose that had the 75 millimeter cannon in it. This unfortunately, but I guess for the purposes of the cruise, this didn't happen. This never went through. But they did have several really interesting other armaments, such as the 37 millimeter cannons. These were used on the what is it? The Airacobra. The P-39 Airacobra. This was the same 37 millimeter cannon on this, and this was a pretty heavy duty. This is a pretty high caliber weapon, especially for aircraft of the time, where most of what they were equipped with were rifle caliber machine guns. These would have been really good against tanks as well. This was like the tank gun was supposed to be used against tanks and ships, but that never materialized, unlike with the B-25. 37 millimeter. This was configured, tested on at least one production model variant, and I do wish that the 37 millimeters did see more action. Unfortunately, this was not the case. One Invader was equipped with a prototype 105 millimeter like howitzer. This also was never fielded, but I think that that they had the option to do this was pretty impressive. Production Block 15 was the 6-gun nose. This was 2 less than the 8-gun. Unfortunately, the Bombardier nose, of course, didn't have any armaments of its own, but they were fitted with 650 cals, 3 in each wing, and I think 8 on each wing as the original configuration in like gun pods. Where is that? In gun pods, where is that? It was the underwing gun pods that these had 8. These were the 8-gun configuration, and this was the 6-gun configuration. So this was a bit more streamlined, because even though this offered greater firepower, this would increase drag heavily on the aircraft. This would slow it down because it interfered with the aerodynamics of the aircraft. They did have the option for gun pods. Sometimes the war didn't allow for conventional or intended configuration of the weapon systems. Only 1 gun in the underwing pods, wing guns, these were the later production variants. These were later removed on later variants, but I think this was the better option, as long as they had like a secure housing, because this interfered with the aerodynamics of the aircraft a lot less. You can see that little vent for the engines as well. Firing mechanism of the internal wing guns, and here's the holographic sight. Gunner would only operate the turret guns. This was for the pilot that would fire directly forward, and this was pretty cool for its time. This was seriously cool for its time. You had the bombs, of course. These were either bombs, torpedoes, or naval mines that they could drop. Siegfried Light over Germany. This was used in both the ending stages of the war against Germany, against Nazi Germany, and against Imperial Japan. These were more preferred in the Western Front against Germany, against the Nazis, because I guess it was better suited for the European environments, for operating in European environments, but it didn't stop it from going basically everywhere. This was in the Korean War. Yokota Air Base, that's in Japan, and these could drop napalm bombs. These could drop basically anything they wanted. Let's see if they could. Yeah, let's see the rockets as well. These could be equipped with anti-tank rockets. They could blow up buildings. They could blow up tanks with them. And these ended up replacing the 75 millimeter gun, the 75 millimeter tank gun, because they were lighter. They were lighter weight than the gun and the ammo, and the ammo inside. And these were more efficient to carry, even if it took up some more wing space. So these were high velocity aircraft rockets, a napalm bomb, and these were light rockets against, like, for general purpose. Those were for anti-tank and launching systems. So those were the hard points used here. I think naval mines would be the same as bombs if done over land. They were used over land before. I think during the Serbian War, naval mines were used on land, on mountains of all places, but I don't think it was like ever really deployed by aircraft over land unless they were really desperate. And if then, why would you waste a naval mine when you could just drop a barrel full of explosives? M8 rockets. Ooh, yeah, T-30 rocket launcher. These were dedicated tubes instead of the hard points. And these could launch torpedoes as well for use against ships. Yeah, the glass noses. These had the Norden bomb sight. Bombardier won't be able to see the target if it was covered up, because these were very sensitive equipment for the time. And this was a recurring issue with a lot of the invaders, both in Europe and in Asia. Both these had the issue of having the front landing gear was designed to swivel into the aircraft when it was retracted. This was not a good idea. It was more compact, it saved more space, but it was a weak point. So there were a few invaders that crashed because the front landing gear failed to deploy properly, and some part of it snapped, as you can see here. And that was an issue in the research that I was doing. And for the turrets, I should mention the turrets as well. These were remotely controlled. These were early for the time. These were remote controlled. These did not have cameras. There were no televisions like in widespread use yet. So the gunner would have like this literal. They would. It was just like a really premature gaming setup where you would have lights. You wouldn't have a screen. You would have lights on a dashboard, and he would fire and aim the guns where the lights popped up, because if the lights popped up, then the sensor detected enemy aircraft. He would then manually orient the turrets at like where the lights were pointing on his dashboard, and then fire the trigger, and then pull the trigger on them. As you can see, there isn't enough space for a person to be in this. So yeah, you can see the antenna, then the gunner's periscope lens, the gunner's escape latch, and the turret itself. They had to, like, they did work. I guess they worked well enough that they decided, let's keep this. But some of them decided it isn't really worth having these anymore, and they replaced them with fuel tanks, because they just wanted they didn't need defensive armament, or they just like didn't want it at the time. So the crews were able to do that to their own aircraft. They just like, because there were so many, and they decided, you know what, let's let the pilots and the aircraft crew decide on what they want for their aircraft. So they were able to like freely customize it, which was, I think, it's basically unheard of today, where everything is so strictly controlled with what you can put on your vehicle, on your weapon, on the things that you use. Like, you could chop these off whenever you wanted, and the soldiers and the airmen and the air crew and the mechanics were able to talk almost directly to the manufacturers of their weapons and say, this is what I want from it. this part doesn't work well, we don't need this. And this is basically unheard of in modern defense, in like the modern defense sphere. No, like where feedback is rarely appreciated, it's rarely even received by the manufacturer. But Douglas back then, they decided, you know what, like we hear you guys, we're gonna start fixing this aircraft. We're gonna delete some of the guns. We're gonna reposition some of the guns somewhere else. We're gonna try and widen up the cockpit, and that's what they did. And it really is impressive that all those minuscule changes, minuscule, but they were effective, that they got through, and they were appreciated by the air crew, which is really interesting. So they were used against Japan. They were used to bomb Japan, against Japanese positions in Okinawa and Taiwan. They weren't the most liked, but ironically, it would get its most usage in Asia, just not against Japan. Against Germany as well. So, and at the end of the war, we'll get into that, but at the end of the war, these were almost considered obsolete. But just as well after that, so they started selling these off. Some of them went to the French, and so they could use them in the Algerian War, which happened right after World War II. Some of them saw were used by the French in Algeria. And these were the first shot, and this was the first instance of the Invader being used as a counterinsurgency aircraft. For the most part, the French were rebuilding after World War II. They were desperate for basically anything. They were using a lot of American weapons. So, like, despite it being an American aircraft, these were happily used by the French. And these were basically used to fight the rebels, to fight the rebellion in Algeria. You can see that they had the bombardier nose. They deleted the underbelly gunner position, I think, for a fuel tank, but they kept the top gunner position. All these were used in Indochina as well, which was the predecessor to the Vietnam War, and it was basically there for the entirety of the conflict. You can see these. I don't think they were. Yeah, okay. So they did use some of the gun nose versions, but they were used in a counterinsurgency capacity against the Algerians. FIC aircraft like Cessna L-39 or Piper Cub, 19 B-26 during the Algerian War. Only a few of which were indeed shot down by the enemy. So this was used for the most part against ground troops that couldn't really fight back. But they needed a bomber that could loiter, that could shoot, that could. This was basically the A-10 of its time. Yeah, it might not have had the big guns that the A-10 did, but this was essentially the A-10 of its time. Oh shit! No, I'm getting an ad somewhere. This was the A-10 of its time. Is all this autism because you learned I can fly a plane? I didn't even. Oh yeah, I just remembered that you have a bush plane. Oh, random perv. The sensor detected an object. It could be an enormous clown face. When I was in PSC, we had a lot of freedom what we did with our gear. I think that's because you were with a private company. They couldn't really order you around, like tell you what you could do with your equipment unless it belonged to the company. But like for government militaries, it's a rarity when the soldiers and the crew can get to do whatever they want with their weapons. Like with here, this was common in World War II, and it was common, I think, even in the Vietnam War, when people basically they didn't really care, like they didn't really care what you could do with your weapons. They just like maintained as long as it got the job done, you were allowed to have it. But in the modern day, you can't really do that. You can't like I don't think you're even like you're not allowed to do a lot of stuff you can't even paint anymore. You can't even paint stuff on your aircraft anymore in the U.S. Air Force and the U.S. Navy. You can only do it as long as your commander allows it. But as for my plane autism, this is like my plane autism has been a part of me for a very long time. If you follow, like if you're aware of the stuff I do on Twitter, if you're aware of the stuff that I post that I post even on the Discord, you'll know that I'm not just into guns, I'm not just into tanks, I'm into planes as well. I'm a big military history enthusiast, and fun fact, I discussed with a Fox 242 who I did a stream about on the F-14, the F-14 Tomcat. In college, I went to college. I went to technical college for 1 year to try and be an aerospace engineer. I was too dumb, so I got kicked out. But I do have a lot of interest in this sort of subject matter and the kinds of things that this entailed. I just love this. I just love planes, man. It's been a first love of mine ever since I got to see the Blue Angels as a kid, and like yeah, I gush a lot about Tom Cruise, but like unironically, my dad showing me Top Gun when I was younger was a major influence on me. I love World War II aviation. I love modern day aviation. I played a lot of aircraft, like I played a lot of vehicle shooter games like Blaze of Glory, like Blazing Angels and War Thunder when I was younger. I don't play War Thunder anymore, but like if I get a PC I would play it again. But overall, I've had this interest in aircraft for a very long time. They're just beautiful things, honestly. These are like yeah, like you can say that about a lot of weapons, but aircraft, especially military aircraft, are some of the prettiest things humans have ever come up with. They are works of art, every single one of these, and I love them so much. And for me, the A-26 is kind of the quintessential. It really is the quintessential bomber of the Second World War. Like even in the Cold War as an attack aircraft, this is the ideal that most attack aircraft, whether it be for the US or others, for a light attack aircraft or a counterinsurgency aircraft, this is the model you should be following. For as long as it's like a twin engine, a twin engine like gunship or a light bomber like this is the ideal form of the aircraft. That's why I love the Invader so much. It's conventional, but it's sleek. It's very sleek for its time. It could be rough and tumble if it needed to be, but this was one of the most advanced aircraft of its time, and it was well loved by its crew. At least in Germany, at least when they were fighting the Nazis, it was very very well loved by its crew. Like I said, this was the last ever aircraft. This was the last ever prop aircraft ordered by the U.S. Army Air Force and the U.S. Air Force. So these were used for. This was the last one they would ever get. At least twin engine for props. They would use the B-29 and the A-1 Skyraider later on, but these were the last of the prop bombers that were used, and it would find its metal in Korea. This would be continued to be used during the Korean War in U.S. Air Force as the U.S. Air Force. Um, middle of conversion. The outbreak of the Korean War caught the USAF by surprise in the middle of conversion from piston aircraft to jets. As along a number of Second World War era aircraft had to be rushed back into frontline service, including the A-26 Invader. These were intended to be replaced by the B-57 Canberra, which was a variation of the English Electric Canberra. It's a British American aircraft designed in Britain but bought by the U.S. Um, that's for another time. This was like it was a jet bomber, a jet medium bomber, that was designed to carry nuclear weapons. This was not, but they were essentially meant to perform the same exact role, so they had to summon these back into service. And I guess these were escorted by its own contemporaries, P-51s, F-4U Corsairs, that kind of thing, because I guess those were the ones that could keep up. These soon forced to operate as a night bomber after the North Koreans and their Chinese allies, don't forget that the Soviets were also operating in Korea, began to move their supply convoys under cover of darkness. I would also begin to think that because it was only used as a night bomber, because during the day, these would be attacked by like fighter jets, like the MiGs, like the MiGs used by the North Koreans and the Chinese and the Soviets, and the Russians, the Soviets, and the North Koreans would employ MiG-15s, and other jet aircraft that could like basically make these very vulnerable. So that wasn't advisable to deploy them during the day. Only American aircraft suitable for this role, the radar-equipped F-82 twin Mustangs, which were not like they're an interesting aircraft, but they're not a good-looking aircraft, had to be retained in Japan. The F-80s were too fast to effectively locate their targets at night, and the muzzle flash from the guns of the P-51 Mustang damaged their pilots' night vision. So this was basically the only one that could be equipped with night vision and could be used as a bomber. B-26B hard nose, 6 staggered 50 cals early, 6 inline vertical. So the 8 inline guns were used for the attacker variant, and I think also the glass nose would have been used a lot. Wings 2, bomb racks. Okay. Yeah, they didn't see too much air-to-air action throughout most of the war. They did shoot down several. They were lost to several, but for the most part, they had to deal with ground fire because I think the front line was a bit further away from the areas that they were commonly being employed, so they wouldn't encounter too much jets. Chi-Com strength located in Manchuria. Yeah, so they didn't. B-26 groups were forced to operate from Japan, which greatly reduced the amount of time they could spend over their targets. In the spring and summer of 1951, the 3rd Bomb Group moved to Kunsan and the 452 to Pusan. Night attacks on convoys remained their main task throughout the war. A number of different tactics had to be developed in order to find their targets in the dark. Some aircraft carried searchlights, others operated along C-47 Firefly. Those were the C-47, I think those were Dakotas, which was the DC-3, also made by Douglas. Others operated in pairs as a hunter-killer team. The first aircraft find the target, fly overhead. When it disappeared, the truck driver would turn his lights back on, just in time for the second hard target to appear and attack it. So they had to, they didn't even have night vision back then. They were just relying on searchlights in order to effectively find their targets, which must have been hell for being the bombardier or the pilot. Using just a giant, you had to use a spotlight in order to find your targets, and where if you used it, then the enemy could very clearly see you even if you couldn't see the enemy. That would have been fucking hellish, man. That was I'm so glad we have night vision nowadays. I'm so glad that we have night vision nowadays because I would not like using that fucking piece of shit searchlight or spotlight just to find and track a target. That would be painful. That would be painful to use. And then this is the beginning of before Vietnam. This is where things get interesting. So they made a lot of these planes. They made an excessive amount of these aircraft, a beautifully excessive amount of these aircraft, the A-26, and of all things, its career during World War II in Korea is basically only the first third of its story. The other 2/3 of it have to deal with one group, and that is the CIA. It is the CIA. Where is this? This was basically this was you could have the A-20, the A-12 and the SR-71 Blackbird and the U-2, but in my opinion there are a few better aircraft representing the shady fucking glowy shit that we did for throughout the most of the Cold War than the Invader. There is a reason why I called it the American anti-hero. America has loves an anti-hero character in literature and fiction, and there is no better aircraft that better embodies that ideal than the Invader. Because we did some shady and ethically questionable fucking shit with these planes. So after Korea, these were used by the CIA to attempt to overthrow I think the president of Indonesia. Yeah, Operation Hake. Officially this operation was never undertaken by the CIA until today. The agency never admitted it took place. Background of the operation might look strange in the first view. It was that the CIA obviously felt that President Sukarno's Indonesia was turning communist, which it was, and that something had to be done about that, and the best apparent solution was being to bring him to fight the communists. So yeah, they had these two okay, so I was wrong. Instead of overthrowing Sukarno, they were used to fight some kind of decided to use some existing oppositional forces of which there were a plethora in Indonesia, because Indonesia had been recently decolonized by the Netherlands. It was by Holland or the Netherlands. They recently left, and so a lot of stuff was going on in Indonesia. You've been there, right, Perv? You've been in Indonesia, ICA and FIB. Try tracking plane movement by sound. That would have been hell. I mean, I've been able to track them before by lights. I am able to track a civilian aircraft when I look up by sound alone and by lights, but it's just that because they're clearly broadcasting, they want to be seen. But I guess if you're looking up at like the trying to search for something that like that you, if I were to look up and there was a if it was at night and I had to look up and there was an aircraft with its starboard and port lights turned off, I would look up, I would not be able to see it. I would not be able to identify it unless I had like a spotlight of my own. Officially, nothing ever happened ever. Yes, I was there along with a few other places, and that's the fascinating part. We have a relic with us. They're like, this could have been you, man. This could have been this is you. This could have been Perv as a plane, just doing shit where like whatever like wherever during the Cold War. Soviets made the MiG, China made a subpar knockoff, and North Korea bought those. They bought both. The the Soviets made Soviets and the Russians made the MiG-15 and the MiG-17. The Chinese made the Shenyang F6, and both of those were used by North Korea. Fun fact: they're still using those because they literally don't have anything else. They're embargoed and sanctioned so heavily that the wars like the Korean War aircraft that they bought are still being flown by the Korean People's Air Force. But yeah, so those were that. But going back to the CIA, for this operation, more three F-51Ds were also taken from the Philippine Air Force along with pilots. Philippines mentioned. Oh, he's Filipino. He has to mention it. But yeah, the speaking of the P-51, it was used in a similar capacity for like an absurd amount of time after World War II. Not only was it the best fighter aircraft of World War II, at least in my opinion, but it was basically the like one of the most produced, and they very frequently used it after the war to do some shady shit and some dirty shit. Um so the P-51s were used as escorts. Additional A-26s and P-51s were to follow, being available after complete refurbishment. One of these crashed. One of these where is that? Yeah, I remember in a video that was seen, one of these crashed in Indonesia. The pilot survived and was captured and arrested by the Indonesian military, and he is officially, I think to this day, disavowed by the CIA because they didn't want to admit that he was there. B-26B from the second batch of Invaders. So these were used for attacking, and these were used for bombing, as of course, because the gun nose is the bomb nose. Black overall, and this was the black metal scheme. On the bare metal overall, the glass noses plated over had a unique color scheme. Undersides in green. Neither example ever reached Monado. So these were painted in black. These were like left silver. I do have a few. Herb says I do have a few contracts who we took back when that did come from the actual CIA. Got to chatting with their rep. He learned how it'd been on CIS's watch list since I was 20. I don't know. What the hell is the CSI? Hold on. I gotta look this up, man. Oh, the Canadian Security Intelligence Service. Oh shit. Perv has been to places, man. Again, we got the relic in here. We got the living legend in here. But this is my favorite bit of history, especially concerning like my second favorite bit of history, especially concerning the CIA and the A-26 Invader, is the Bay of Pigs. Especially since I live in Florida. I interact with and love a lot of Cubans around here. I love our Cuban community is and like the idea and like the story of the Bay of Pigs and the Cuban exiles like Brigade 2506, as you saw during like my fascination with it during my Call of Duty Black Ops stream. Um, my obsession with it during the Call of Duty Black Ops stream. I am a big fan. Like I'm a like big fan of like it's such an interesting and tragic story of the story of the Bay of Pigs. We could have won had we intervened before the Soviets got involved. We could have intervened. We could have done something, and Cuba wouldn't need have been communist. But here we are and stuck in this stupid stalemate. We could have won. We could have done it, but that's enough politics for me. Like, I guess don't let it get too political. But this was part of it. This was in fact part of it. Um, if you've seen the mission, like if you're familiar with the mission in Call of Duty Black Ops One, where you go and kill Castro, and his villa, his mansion, starts getting bombed by the by Cuban rebel A-26 invaders. These were the A-26 invaders used by the Cuban rebels in that mission. In real life, when that took place, they were bombing Castro's mansion, and they were using these. They unfortunately didn't last very long because Castro had fighter jets. He had American trainer jets, reconverted back into fighters by adding guns to them, and a lot of these were shot down. A lot of these, like I think around half of the force did not survive. Weekend warriors in the Alabama Air Guard. So the Alabama Air National Guard, the U.S. Air Force, the CIA, and the Cuban rebels were sent against Castro in these. 60 Alabamans recruited as CIA civilian contract personnel sent to Central America to train the Cuban exiles in 1961. Um, yeah. After the beachhead collapsed and the resistance, having exhausted their supplies, surrendered to Castro's army. Yeah, these were supposed to be escorted by U.S. Navy fighter jets because they were fucking stupid. The fighter jets arrived an hour late because they forgot that Cuba was in a different time zone. From the USS Essex, from the U.S. aircraft carrier Essex, they were supposed to send fighter jets to escort these to their targets so they could blow them up and then like shoot them up and then return home. The escorts never arrived. They were never arrived. These did not have fighter plane escorts. Unlike in the Philippines and Indonesia, these did not have fighter plane escorts. And they were basically sitting ducks for the entirety of the Bay of Pigs because Castro had I think Hawker Sea Tempests and F-80 Shooting Stars and P-80 Shooting Stars, and they were able to basically knock all of these out when like with impunity, which was a tragedy. They were able to use these effectively, I think, for the most part. Destroy. Okay, so landing force ammunition. The B-26 air crews provided as much air support to the ground forces as much as they could, but with too little effect. The Liberation Air Force lost 5 of its 16 B-26s and their crews that day. Those that survived the firestorm that morning limped back to the secret CIA base at Puerto Cabezas, Nicaragua, which was the staging base for their operation. There they worked the Alabama Guardsmen to patch up the damaged planes and kept flying back to Cuba, each mission being more than 6 hours over open water without navigation. Then they went without sleep until exhaustion set in. By the next day, officers in Washington were telling Kennedy that the U.S. planes must fly in to support the invasion. This was for 6 hours. This was for days. This was for days that they had to do this while being shot up every single time, receiving battle damage every single time, hoping they wouldn't get hit, flying over to the Bay of Pigs to bomb it, and then coming back, hoping not to get shot down over open water, hoping they wouldn't get engine failure, and then landing. It was. Oh, God bless those crews, man. That is fucking hell. Faced with exhausted air crews and a desperate situation on the ground in Cuba, CIA finally authorized the Alabama Guardsmen to fly missions on April 19th. The authorization came with a warning. Should they get captured, the United States would declare to the world that their men were mercenaries and would disavow any knowledge of their bad activities. That's a classic aspect of like espionage fiction that I still enjoy, but it's like you're on your own, pal. Good luck out there. Despite the grim prospect, 4 Alabama pilots and 4 crewmen stepped forward. Um, the lead formation was commanded by Billy Dodo Goodwin, a major in the Air Guard, and Gonzalo Herrera, a fearless Cuban pilot known as El Tigre by his compatriots. Alabama Guard Joe Shannon, Riley Schamberger, and Thomas Willard Pete Ray also volunteered. Crewmen from Alabama include Leo Baker, Wade Gray, Nick Sedano, James Vaughn. Mario Zuniga and his observer rounded out the strike force. And that's the best part is that like their best, because they weren't escorted by fighter planes, their best defense was being confused for Castro's air force. To my knowledge, these were in fact used by the Cuban Air Force by Castro's forces, so they were able to blend in at least initially, which is why they were in Cuban Air Force colors. This is not USAF or CIA. This is in Cuban Air Force insignia, and that's the best part. It was all of it was like all of it was posing as someone else, wearing a mask, all of that. Yeah, as the surviving B-26 crews flew out of the area, the jet fighter from the Essex finally arrived. In a tragic mix-up, perhaps related to time zones, they arrived an hour too late. Most of these guys got shot down, and yeah, so it wasn't it wasn't its finest moment, but it was one of its most interesting. And that's like I think that's what I learned not from World War II like media, but the idea but like reading history and like websites and internet articles about the Bay of Pigs is like when I was younger and like reading history books is what got me interested in the Invader, because this fascinated me. This whole like such an over aircraft like as an attacker or a bomber could be used in such an overt direct attack, like such a covert secretive role. This was the secret agent plane, and that's why I liked it so much. Our air power at the Bay of Pigs, the Cuban brigade, yeah, the B-26s. JFK turns the plan, and it just got fucked up. It like they fucked it up, and they didn't do very well. But I guess the other half of the story is is the CIA deciding, you know what, we have more of these. Let's keep doing this. And we're going into on the other side of the world, which is another part of the I guess some of the Kennedy part of the Kennedy saga is the A-26 in Vietnam, this was the first major redesign of the aircraft, and in my opinion, for the most part, the better version. Let's read chat in the meanwhile. CISIS is Canada's spy agency. I'm sure I'm still on it somewhere, probably on the legacy list where I'm only there for reference material. Military incompetency is what elections are made of. I'm aware I had to do a few jobs where we were promised backup and given none. Why do you think people like me got work? The ability to disavow gets anything done? Yeah, that's probably why. It is fascinating, like sharing this history with people who were probably like for some elements they were there, but going back to this article. This is the A-26K counter invader. This was the A-26K Invader. Invader redesignated the B-26K counter invader. Then in Thailand, because they weren't allowed bombers for some reason, they redesignated it the A-26K. And the invader's role as the counter invader is probably and unironically the best iteration they could get of this aircraft, and it was the most modern. This was essentially taking an aircraft from World War II and the design philosophies of World War II and making it fit all these hard points. You see all these hard points and like no gunners like facing rear or aft. But you had all these hard points on the external hard points instead of the bomb bay. These this is still the philosophy that we have of designing attack aircraft in the modern day. Yes, there's stealth aircraft that have to return to the bomb to return to internal bomb bays and weapons bays, but like they had to switch to this variant, this stacked wing with all these hard points that replace the machine guns, all these stacked hard points. This is a very modern style of arming an aircraft and putting weapons on an aircraft, and that philosophy being applied to a World War II aircraft, which only a few were ever configured in this way, it's wild, but it's amazing. This was the A-26K. So where is that? These were everywhere. These were sent to Thailand. These were sent to assist Thailand. These were sent to assist South Vietnam. These were sent to assist the Royal Laotian Army. Assist over Laos, over these guys. Invader. Where is that? The Onmark Engineering Company military. This was by Onmark. This is the Onmark, the B-26K Onmark Counter Invader. That is a mouthful, but it is such a pretty aircraft. So this is a fuel tank. They added those on the alongside so they could extend the range of the aircraft. Yeah, of those. 71 feet over the wingtip tanks, 19 feet, 540 square feet. They upgraded the engines to add more power. They retuned the engines. They were using the same engines from World War II, but they got the new propellers, and they got, I think, an engine tune-up that allowed, one of the videos that I watched said it got 30% more power, which was impressive. I think, yeah, they added water injection, which allowed it to run a little bit better. Induction vibrator. The system was completely independent of the aircraft electrical system. Ignition system was a low tension, high altitude type. Low tension magneto, 2 distributors, 36 shielded ignition harnesses, 18 double high tension coils, shielded spark plugs, and 1 induction vibrator for each engine. So I think they had to no, they didn't have to increase the size of the nacelle. They probably like made it smaller to make it more efficient, but I'm not sure. That could be BS. Aircraft began flying in 1961 in support of various operations, including ranch hand and farm gate. However, with 2 losses due to structural failures, the B-26Bs were withdrawn in 1964. Okay, so these two were withdrawn because the wings started snapping. The wings of these aircraft started snapping. There is someone else downstairs, so like, I might have to continue half of this on another stream, might not. I'm not sure at the moment. But yeah, we have with these and with these aircraft specifically, before they were upgraded, some of the wings started snapping off, so they had to do a full 100% rebuild of basically everything. They had to strengthen the fuselage, they had to give it new wings, new engines, new basically everything, because of the metal fatigue it had sustained over a lot of flying since World War II. These had to be basically rebuilt from the ground up. But that was like, as they said, this was a 0-hour flight aircraft. These were remade from the ground up, rebuilt in its entirety, and then sent back out. For use as tactical bombers in Southeast Asia, combat duty in 2 decades of wear took their toll. And again, removed from service, resurrected once more. There is a similar aircraft to this that was deployed right after World War II called the A-1 Skyraider. This shares a lot of shared heritage with it. A lot of shared heritage with the A-1 Skyraider, because it was used for basically the same missions. But for these being used by the CIA were a lot more shady, and they could go to places a lot different from the regular Air Force until the CIA got Skyraiders as well. The aircraft were withdrawn from service, although they were very effective in their mission. It was attributed to the efforts of certain Air Force generals who wanted an all-jet Air Force, regardless of whether a propeller-driven aircraft was better suited to the job. An excuse was given that the aircraft was getting too old for combat, but the reality was that they had been completely refurbished no more than 3 years prior. If operations had continued, 679 was next in line to be shipped over. It was fortuitous as National Treasure took its new road to destiny. So they have this. They have this one, I think, at an air museum. A-26s rolled out on on-mark engineering, and that leads into, I think for the most part, I think I will I'm gonna cover on-mark engineering in a second, but in the moment, I do want to cover its least known role, which was, hold on, let me find in the Cold War, where is that? These were sent to, there is a news thing playing downstairs. I hope he keeps it down. I'm not sure, but I hope he does. So I can continue with this, so I can continue talking to you guys. Um, so one part that I want to highlight, that I do want to mention, is that these were used in the Congo, in the Democratic Republic of Congo. I think, no, it was before the Democratic Republic of Congo, in use by the Belgian Air Force. These were the B-26Ks, the counter invaders, were sent over by the CIA to the Belgian Air Force, so they could use those as attack aircraft in Congo during the Stanleyville siege. Um, the Yeah, five have been sent to the Congo beginning in 1964 to be flown by Cuban exile pilots who were essentially mercenaries against the so-called Simba rebels. Keep making your twink noises. They gotta change over the smoked bison and add some salt. That sounds good, though. That sounds really good. I will keep going. And I think these were used in Africa, and possibly its most noble effort was the Biafran Air Force. The Biafran Air Force that had the Biafra babies, Douglas B-26 Invaders, B-25, armed with machine guns and like all the other stuff. These were used by the Biafran Air Force during the Nigerian Civil War. These were flown against Nigeria by volunteers in order for, well, it's more like they call it the Nigerian Civil War, but this was really the Biafran War of Independence. Not getting too much into the politics, but these were supported by mercenary volunteers, the Biafrans in Africa. These were bought from them and then flown mostly by volunteers to attack the invading Nigerians, in the war of Nigerian aggression against Biafra. But these were, in May 1967, the eastern region of Nigeria seceded from the Federation and proclaimed itself the Republic of Biafra, with Colonel Chukwuemeka Unimugwu Ojukwu as its head of state. For the next 33 months, a bloody civil war ensued, which cost lives of 2 million people. The Federal Nigerian Air Force was comparatively well equipped with combat aircraft, including MiG-17s, L-29s, another favorite of mine. I love the L-29, but they were used by the bad guys, at least relative bad guys. I don't want to get too political, but I would consider the Nigerians the bad guys in this instance. And 6 Ilyushin IL-28 jet bombers, all flown by mercenary crews. For Biafra, however, the situation was different. Isolated both geographically and politically, she was unable to obtain aircraft by conventional means and had to rely on the often shady world of the arms dealer, and as a result came to operate a somewhat motley collection of aircraft. Her 2 A-26 Invaders were perhaps the most interesting. The stories how they were obtained almost make a thriller novel. It was operated for a number of years by the French Centre d'Essai de Vol at Bretigny-sur-Orge, which was used for radar calibration. It was disposed of to Le Service des Domaines Government Property Agency, so it was used by the French government, and then it was sold to a Mr. David C.C. Lau of Pan-Eurasian Trading Company in Luxembourg, who purchased it as an investment. Now, this was not out of the ordinary as a time. You could buy like a surplus aircraft whenever you wanted. These were used at the time. These were used not only as bombers and attackers, but as business aircraft. As these were predecessor to like the private jets that you see. These were the predecessors, although these were not jets; they were prop aircraft. You could buy these whenever you wanted. Where's that? The cabins, the civil cabins. These could have been used. These could, like, yeah, you have modern cockpits and everything. These could have been used as fully civilian, non-sus, non-military aircraft. You had these like really, really pretty, these leather seats, this leather upholstery for the this livery from its time as a business aircraft. So it wasn't out of the ordinary. Where is that? The Biafran invaders. Indications that where the aircraft was probably purchased purely for its engines. Aviation sold it for French francs 9,800 to one Ernest Koenig, a U.S. aircraft engineer and aircraft broker, whose name was appear frequently in connection with Biafra's aircraft procurement. Koenig applied for U.S. registration in 1966. If it is believed, Biafrans eventually paid him $320,000 for his aircraft, and his profit margin would surely go down in the annals of history. So this was bought for 9,000 nearly 10,000 francs, and then $320,000 that he got as like for profit. Well, not for profit, but if francs and dollars, I don't know the conversion rate, but 32,000 minus 20 minus 9, that's gonna be 11,000 10,000 okay, what is it? I'm trying to do that mental math. 10,000 10,000 minus 800. Yeah, 31,000 no, what is it? 309,000 $200 for the aircraft. What is that? Yeah, there it is. Florida is loaned by Belgian pilot Van Riesekom. The aircraft took off for Nigeria and arrived in Enugu by a stopover airport Harcourt. The delivery pilot from Lisbon onwards was a Polish ex-RAF Spitfire pilot called Jan Zumbach, and he had been assisted by a French co-pilot, commanded by a French pilot. So these were paid no more than $4,000 for the flight. Lestrade's fee was not recorded, although two Americans were paid considerably more than him. So these were flown like country to country until they could reach Biafra. FAA annual reporting form, returned by endorsing the back of the document. The Invader was essentially a civilian machine, and to facilitate its export from Europe, it was described as a survey escort destined for an organization in Gabon and carried no offensive armament. And as a result of its previous missions, it had an unusually shaped solid nose, so no bombardier nose and no guns. It was faired in its original bare metal color, pale blue undersides, distinctive shark mouth, and a glaring eye. A scheme which found much favor the enthusiastic Biafrans. So this was the one that was given to them. The rudder was painted in three national colors: black, green, and red, with a Biafran rising sun insignia. The electrical bomb release mechanisms were still in place, but were designed to function with conventional bombs of a certain configuration and weight. Biafran bombs were makeshift affairs, fashioned from oil drums and gas cylinders that were in no way compatible with the relatively sophisticated systems in the Invader. So this was originally originally configured to drop like World War II aircraft bombs like by the U.S. The Biafrans didn't have any of those, so they just gave it barrel bombs. They literally gave it barrel bombs. So they gave it barrel bombs. Zumbach, who by this time was calling himself Johnny or Kamikaze Brown, had no choice but to instruct his bombardiers to throw them out the open bomb bay. Okay, so the bombs were made by Biafran artificer Willie Achukwe, whose former trade, it was rumored, lay in the manufacture of fireworks, so he was a firework manufacturer. Willie's bombs were marvels of ingenuity and even include delayed action device as well. I guess any terrorist knew how to make one. Zumbach describes one creation as having a vase containing phosphorus suspended in an insulating liquid. Okay, I can't read that on YouTube. That's not allowed. But it's history. It's historical information about a historical rebellion in Africa. I'm allowed to describe it. Okay, I can't read that. I am prohibited by YouTube's terms and services. I'm sorry, I cannot read that. I cannot finish that sentence. I cannot read the rest of that statement. But these were like very makeshift aircraft. They were outfitted with basically whatever they could find. These were very heavily jury rigged. Neither of these were gunships. I think some of them were rearmed with machine guns in some cases, but these never got their like intended heavy rearmament. They never got their gun noses back. They never got their wing noses, their wing guns back. They didn't get any of those. You still can if you know where to go. Well, I'm not gonna read it out loud. I'm not gonna I by law I cannot read it by YouTube terms and services. I cannot read that read that out loud. But these were used by the Biafrans, Biafran air gunner, dangerous in a large gamble. It goes without saying that no machine guns suitable for aircraft mounting were available in Biafra. However, the Biafrans were massive masters of improvisation and falling to a visit to the government armory from which he was invited to take his pick of the available equipment. Zumbach returned to the airfield with 2 antiquated army-issued checkmate machine guns. Biafran mechanics had seen the first one mounted in the nose of the Invader, with the barrel protruding from the nose. The hapless forward gunner was obliged to crouch in the dim recesses of the nose cone, and without any view of the outside world and without any voice communication with his pilot. Again, Biafran ingenuity came to the rescue. A length of cord was attached to the gunner's arm, with the other end threaded to the pilot's station. Zumbach, equipped with a simple homemade gun sight, simply tugged once on the cord and instructed the gunner to start firing, and twice when he was to stop. A simple solution. The second one was rigged to fire through the open bomb bay. There were prototype other aircraft. I think there were Soviet aircraft and German aircraft, Soviet aircraft and Nazi planes during World War II that were configured to fire this way. This didn't happen. This wasn't popular because they couldn't get any degree of accuracy out of it. But of a gun to fire out of the bomb bay, they never did that. They never. There were only prototypes, and they never really were. They never were able to get that going. Second one is rigged to fire, and yeah, like the literal human option. Like this was like I just told you about the B-26K and how it's like so modern, has modern electronics. You see this aircraft that has for the civilian version, the civilian version with like a modern cockpit with a screen. This was not available to the Biafrans. They literally and even during World War II, the forward-facing guns were remotely controlled. This one required a person inside of the nose to fire it. This is like they couldn't even build a mechanism to fire the guns directly forward. They had to put a guy in there, but it worked, man. It worked. It worked to their credit. Puff puff and chin chin instead of bombs. Yeah, who were the weapons used on? Bombardiers had appeared to have some effect, and both gunners blazed away as long as the target remained in sight. The Biafran press, ever mindful of the effects of propaganda, waxed lyrical about the days about the attack, hailing Zumbach as the savior of Biafra. So they were able to successfully attack Nigerian army forces. Zumbach managed an attack on the motorized column traveling with supplies from Canada, which resulted in his being hit by ground fire. Aircraft tires being unobtainable in Biafra, he was forced to make an unscheduled trip back to Europe to find a spare. Called for Zumbach and put a proposal on the only capital ship in the Nigerian Navy, the Nigeria, which was moored in estuary off Harcourt. The fear that the Nigerians might be planning a landing to take out Biafra's lifeline of the sea. Special far heavier bombs would be required, which were manufactured by the Biafran artificer. Both bombs exploded, covering the Nigeria with clouds of spray, making the up anchor and flee for the safety of open waters. Well hyped by the Biafran publicity machine. So they weren't. They did attack the They did attack a Nigerian Navy ship. They were not able to sink it, but they did what they could. DC-3 and the Invader, which now been christened by the Shark in view of its nose art, was unable to cope with the demands being put on it by Ojukwu and his commander, so he hit on the idea of organizing a leaflet-dropping campaign. So, overall, he was aboard the oil storage tanks at Bonny. I'm not going to give a full rundown of the war, but in short, then the Biafrans lost the war. They really couldn't win their independence, unfortunately, and not with invaders. So they weren't able to achieve their goals using this aircraft. Jean Zumbach and Jacques Lestrade. So I think these were the guys flying the aircraft. As you can see, it's a solid nose. Lestrade, the newly acquired B-26. you can see the single gun pointing out of the front. Yeah, that single gun pointing out of the front. After a heavy landing resulting in a nose wheel tire failure. Yeah, that would happen. Like we said, the front nose landing gear was the structural weak point of the A-26, I think, for across its entire service history, because they couldn't really change how the landing gear went into the aircraft. It still had to turn on its side before retracting, so this would have been a bad, like, this would have had extra pressure being put on it. So there's the shark, and there's the there's this one. This was painted in camouflage colors. Um, in Poland. So Zumbach was born in Poland. He flew during World War II, and then a lot of airplane graveyards still will let you pick through if you pay them. You still. You still can if you know where to look. That you still can comment was in reference to buying aircraft. Oh yeah, you can. You definitely can. There's still a lot of warbirds on sale. But they're kind of like vintage cars. Like they're the vintage cars of the air world. You can't really get them in large numbers, and you have to know where to look. And the Cold War, but yeah, that's the story of them in Biafra, which was a really fascinating story. And in across the Cold War, you had those. And this is the final third of the story, which is, yeah, the evolution of executive aviation, Logue Aviation, and the On-Mark Marksman. This is the On-Mark Marksman. This is built by the same company that rebuilt them into the Counter Invader. You can see like there's another land yacht. I think that's a Chevy or a Cadillac, but this was the Cadillac of the air for a while until private jets became more widespread. Um, a luxurious cabin, upgrading the aircraft in the new nose section for radar and baggage. It was pretty cramped, as you can see with the civil cabin. Like these were pretty cramped, but at the same time they were really fancy. I would adore to fly in one of these one day. It's so pretty. Oh man, it's so old. It has the old plastic the big landline phones they could use inside the aircraft. And you have the seatbelts there. Those are like with beautiful leather seats. Is that a TV? That's a TV in there. Um, Lavatory door closed or a duck under evident. I think these two are actresses or like Hollywood actresses that were flying in there. I've seen their faces before, but I can't remember their names. But you had the cabin view aft. So if you wanted to get really fancy, you had a big ass couch. You had a big couch separated by the curtains. And Logue Aviation. Performance of a bomber and the comfort of a business jet. Marksman performance was impressive, especially for an aircraft that began as a military machine. Takeoff gross weight of 35,000 pounds. The Marksman could reach cruising altitudes of over 20,000 feet in minutes, all while maintaining smooth handling and impressive stability. Configuration varied, but at its peak, the aircraft would cruise at speeds of up to 365 miles an hour, the range of 2,500 miles, perfect for cross-country business trips. So this was a short-haul airliner. It could work as one as well. If it was loaded with people and luggage instead of bombs and like munitions, this could take you across the country. Driving up against a Cadillac with fins to board a converted bomber isn't just a scene from the past, it's a symbol of what made that era special. At Logue Aviation, the spirit of that time lives on, helping clients focus on the joy of aviation, not the stress and complexities of aircraft maintenance. So they are flying Invaders, I think. This company, Logue Aviation. Let's see. Your partner in keeping your aircraft, rewriting the rules of aircraft maintenance. I love this. I love these like vintage posters. They're so like that early jet setting age. But I do love I think they were Logue Aviation was flying the A-26 back then. Um, yeah, the A-26 Invader civil variants, and there is a one particular civil variant that is perhaps. Hold on, let me check. There we go. There we go. We're fixed up. Where is that? Of the A-26, yeah, the civil variants. You can use these a lot until, in their quest, corporations. Okay, so, affordability, reliability, accessibility, controllability, adaptability, and maneuverability. The period after the end of World War II saw rapid growth in the use of corporate-owned aircraft for executive transportation. That need was fed mainly by conversions of small transports and high-speed wartime medium bombers, but in the early 1950s, serious thought was given to the design and production of the ideal executive aircraft. To this end, the Corporation Aircraft Owners Association, later the NBAA, published results of a survey taken of its members in 1952, and servants with the association's members at the time were 1,700 multi-engine aircraft, including 265 DC-3s, those are the Dakotas, or the Skytrains, the 210 Lodestars and 2 DC-4s. In their quest for equipment, corporations relied heavily on a variety of military surplus aircraft, including B-20Cs, B-23s, B-25 Mitchells, A-26 Invaders, B-17s, and B-24 Liberators. Surveys showed that the members wanted new aircraft that could carry 6 to 12 passengers, be pressurized, have tricycle landing gear, cruise at 255 miles an hour, and have a range of 1,200 miles. Whatever their desires, there would be not any real new offerings to the corporate aviation world until the early 1960s until the early 1960s with the introduction of the first business jets. So these were literally shed. An A-26 Invader could literally shed 3,000 pounds of equipment when decommissioned, not allowing for the potential 4,000 to 6,000 bomb load capacity, allowing for a possible passenger load of 2,500 pounds, plus executive fittings or a slurry water load of 7,000 to 10,000 pounds. This made the aircraft an easy tool to adapt and modify without compromising performance. This section, civil, is by far the largest on the site, as the civilian side of the Douglas A-26 Invaders, where my main interest lies. For the most part, it's not mine, but I think it's still a really fascinating part of its history. Development, production history, U.S. and foreign companies that flew the Invader. So, like, these were flown basically as private jets, private aircraft. Bomb bay doors sealed as shut, passenger entry doors in the bomb bay, and the conversion of the fuselage accept 6 to 8 passengers. So these were used as like to ferry people around in style. Illegal A-26 Invader sales. That is a core part of why I love the A-26 Invader. On-mark engineering. Where is that? Air racing. Yeah, the on-mark engineering code brochure. Let me show you guys that. Let me hold on. Let me see if I can Oh man, I have to reload the page. Hold on. Hold on, let me I gotta reload the page real quick. Hold on, let me wait for it to load. Anyways, let's show you guys this. This was used for air racing. This was used for air racing as well because this was a reasonably fast aircraft. Like when it wasn't being weighed down by bombs, the big engines. It was a lightweight aircraft. This could be used for a lot of This could be used for a lot of racing. Racing not to one during World War II. The next race. So there's that. Hold on. Let me see if that's There we go. Okay. On-mark engineering code brochure. Let me show you guys this. This was by the on-mark marketeer. This was again for corporate and civil aviation. You could really and it really does pass really well off as this like really glamorous lightweight civilian ad. It really does look like this like very conventional looking. But a reasonably pretty light business aircraft, and there isn't and the fun part is that this never got replaced. There was never really a business aircraft that could be used as a military one. There was never really a military aircraft that could be used as a business one effectively. It was too specialized. It was too in its role. Yeah, this is the seating set. This is the seating layout. You had to climb over some seats like you're in a car, but it was comfortable. And like if you sat up front, you could talk to the pilots. That's so cute. That's really nice. You could talk to the pilots. You could eat lunch if you had lunch on board. Like there wasn't much space to cater, but like I guess you could pull a sandwich out of the fridge or something if they could like install a fridge on here. The on-mark marketeer outperforms the field. There was the Beechcraft Bonanza, or the Beechcraft Model 18, which is a pretty aircraft of its own. but it doesn't really compare to the A-26 aircraft A and aircraft B. I think that was a flying boat. This was cheaper. This was just as cheap, and this offered a really unique kind of experience. This was like a high-speed aircraft that they could work with, and the civilian liveries were just as much as pretty colors as they were in the military ones. Radial chic. The new pressurized marksman. Okay, so they did actually offer pressurized versions of these that could fly higher above the weather, that could fly higher above like so they could avoid storm clouds and all that. They could fly at higher altitudes. So the marksman was pressurized, unlike the military variants where it had to be open air. Performance that invites comparison. Yeah, it's so glamorous. I love the civil. Like, I know it's not my main like my main layer of interest, but the civilian variants of the Invader were just so, it was so pretty. Hold on, and I gotta, let me reload this page as well. Let me reload this page as well. New window. Yeah, the flying magazine, the unmarked marksman. Hold on, where is that? Yeah. So I'm from Connie Sue White. Flying magazine below left. Instrument panel and flight deck has been redesigned to give greater pilot ease and convenience. So they did update these as the years went on. Yeah, again, that's such a pretty picture. Rugged, versatile, and popular, executive conversions of the World War II Douglas B-26 have taken a new lease on life. Addition of pressurized cabins for over-the-weather flying tops off the airplanes, already proven performance, safety, and economic capabilities. Aircraft handles well at altitude. This could be basically a Stratos cabin supercharged, heat exchanger, and associated hardware. These could go wherever they needed. These could go basically wherever they wanted. And in those colors, I would love to arrive in style in one. Carport 9. And so you have like the big old stat sheet here. You have the takeoff gross weight, 35,000 pounds. Takeoff distance. Yeah, they had like, you could do with a short runway. They could land on, like, planes like this could land where jets couldn't, because business jets required a longer runway, and like jet aircraft in general and larger planes required a bigger runway. This could go basically wherever you wanted. And yeah, modified by private civilian operators. Let's see if this will load. Okay, it will. So this were used also in like a more like blue collar role, is ideal as a single pilot aircraft and an abundance of cheap spares. Saw service yet again as a multitask airframe that was fully adaptable to suit any use. Hired at to take various operations, fog dispersal. So these could be used as like as a firefighting aircraft. The bomb bay could be reconfigured to drop water on wildfires and like forest fires, and this could also be used as crop dusting for agricultural purposes. There are smaller aircraft that are more ideal for that, but the fog dispersal, but for like, I guess it works plenty good in that role. Mineral and geographic survey operations using a tail magnometer. Um, oh yeah, that's a really nice shot. That's a really nice shot of the aircraft. Oh man, I dig that silver color. I dig that silver color a lot. Let's see what else. Oh, yeah, as you can see, this is like a really old website. This is a 12-year-old. This is a website that's more than 12 years old. It hasn't been updated in 6 years. So I guess when I reached out to the author of this website, he didn't respond. But I guess I'm in his honor, I am featuring his website because it is, and it is a very good website. I love that. I love that yellow color on that aircraft. Air cover camera ship. Okay, so these were also used as like for aerial filming as well. Oil deposit locations. So these are mostly used by oil companies to like survey for oil, at least in the civil aviation role. But they were used as well as de-icing test platforms, military tracking systems, fish. Transportation of fish. Oh yeah, because they needed to get these, like, because fish needed to be like a bit, like they couldn't be frozen for long. They had to transport them really far distances. These were used by air transport as a cargo plane for fish. For fish, I guess it was used for that. River sander. dropping sand and crushed coral on frozen rivers to aid in ice breakup. So this was really, really good as a civil aviation aircraft as well. They could use them for basically anything they wanted. Less glamorous jobs, but I prefer it for the more glamorous and the more shady jobs. And perhaps, the on-mark marketeer. Where is that? Let me see if this page will load. Yeah, we're getting into that in a second. Planes get used for a lot of odd things. Yeah, especially like the more utility the aircraft can have, the more utility the aircraft will have. Let's see if this page will reload. Hold on. New window. There we go. That's a lot prettier. Okay, so we're able to get that going. Yeah, this is on the solid nose variant. This is the civilian. This is the civilian variant. You can see the with the extended nose how pretty this plane looks. And here we go. Where is that? Let me find the I gotta reload a lot of these pages, unfortunately, because this is a again, like I mentioned, this is an old website. Oh man. Okay, let me reload that. It was working just a minute ago. There we go. That's the third part of the sphere. Is illegal A-26 Invader sales. The B-26 sailed to Portugal. Needed a replacement for the Portuguese bomber and close air support fleet flew in Africa, composed of PV-2 Harpoons and F-84 Thunderjets. So they needed these. It is not clear how the export licenses were obtained, but in May 1965, the first aircraft, piloted by John Hawke, was ferried from Tucson to Tancos, Portugal, through Rochester, Canada, and Santa Maria, Azores. 7 aircraft had already been delivered. In September, the U.S. Customs arrested Hawke and other people involved in the arms deal and prevented a C-46 transporting spare parts from Portugal from leaving the United States. So these were sold to the Portuguese Air Force, but illegally. Because of the UN arms embargo. So the Portuguese Air Force was under sanctions. No one could really sell weapons to them during the 1960s, but they busted the sanctions. They got these planes to them, but they weren't able to get the spare parts. The way it entered the Portuguese Air Force inventory was the Força Aérea Portugal inventory was, to say the least, unorthodox, and its service was not only short but full of difficulties and incidents. The war business and the foreign invaders. It is a rather amusing fact that the writer El Tavares, although more or less aware of what was happening to the Portuguese Air Force, which is the Força Aérea Portugal, I think that's what it's called in Spanish. I know they speak Portuguese, but like, I know how to say it in Spanish. Only knew of the deal after reading in the American Library in Lisbon the report published in the Saturday Evening Post in the 60s. They didn't know that the deal went through. Liber SA in Geneva, the arms dealer ended with an agreement with Aero Associates of Arizona to supply 20 aircraft that would be refurbished by Hamilton Aircraft. The first aircraft should be delivered by April 30th, 1965, and the last one by January 1966. All those parts didn't get there. John Hawke was a colorful type, as he already had in his logbook of RAF pilot a chase of a U-2 that had overflown Cyprus and was based there. In 1968, participated in the filming of the movie The Battle of Britain, piloting the B-25 using the camera ship. So he was like an aircraft cameraman. And he was an RAF pilot in World War II. And finally, some years later, disappeared without a trace while flying over the Mediterranean. So no one knows what happened to him. Some extemporaneous. Meanwhile, the Air Force. Okay, where is that? Some extemporaneous offers were also received. One of the most interesting being the one proposed in January 1971 to sell to the Portuguese Air Force 6 ex-Guatemalan Air Force B-26s by each one is 950,000 $950,000 for each FOB for each gray with 6-gun noses. So these were delivered with the aircraft weapons, with the aircraft armaments. The author will never forget the sleek bird that he saw many times in 1971 departing for test flights during his service as a young engineer at OGMA. So the author of this website did manage to see some of these in Portuguese hands, some of the Portuguese ones. The War in Biafra, we already covered that one. Oh man, there's like Lunata. So we have very much into flying, locating and flying film aircraft. Has been later fished up out of the Adriatic. Miami driving license, the name of John Hawk. Where is that? Okay, B-26 ports. So those are the ones in port. Those are the ones used by the Portuguese Air Force to combat the Angolan rebels. And then El Salvador versus Honduras, the 100-hour war. For my Latin American viewers will find this very funny. In El Salvador versus Honduras, the 100-hour war, these were used by the where is it? Yeah, what in Guatemala? Guatemalan B-26Cs were never repaired. Instead, used as a source of spares. So what is it? The Salvadoran Invader fleet only saw a short service. The decision was taken for them to sold back to the USA, and knew this time jet fighters to be acquired instead. Honduras followed suit, being the last American Air Force to acquire the B-26. So a single Invader, the venerable Bacardi bomber, was acquired under murky circumstances from Costa Rica. We will be looking at the Bacardi bomber later on. This website does not have an article on the Bacardi bomber, but we'll see that later on. So it was brought back into service. I was sold in the USA. So this was used in the 100-hour. This was like, for those unaware, the 100-hour war is also known as the football war, the football war in Latin America, and the soccer war in the US, because the war was literally started over like a World Cup game, not a joke. And this war was also the last time World War II fighters were used against each other. In combat, and I think one of the rare times U.S. Army Air Force, like U.S. military aircraft, were used against each other by opposing forces, by two opposing parties. I think El Salvador had Cavalier Mustangs, which, like the A-26, were refurbished versions of the P-51 Mustang, and Honduras had Goodyear Corsairs, which were refurbished versions of the F-4U Corsair. Because they didn't speak correctly and they think soccer is football. You can't get enough of them playing girls and tank girls. We'll have to spam your Discord later. Yeah, but this was a really fascinating... It's a fascinating part of history that I really appreciate learning about. And it's, again, unfortunately I don't have images for that, but they did it was used in the oddest of conflicts. The 100-hour war, I think that's the last one. And here is the juiciest part. Here's the juiciest part. Yeah, drug runners. Remember how I said it all started because of the CIA? Many of the aircraft used in drug smuggling back in the 70s and 80s were surplus military aircraft. So this humble aircraft, where is that? Hold on. Humble aircraft was used for smuggling cocaine. It was one of those. It could be telling war stories at one point. It could be ferrying oil CEOs. It could be fighting for Biafran independence. It could be crop dusting. It could be firefighting. It could be continuing its work as a bomber in Latin America, also in Latin America, it could be smuggling drugs. It could be smuggling heroin. It could be smuggling cocaine. Excuse me. Oh, sorry. Frederick Lutiers was one drug smuggler who used the unmarked marksman. Rick Lutiers was a drug smuggler who led the largest cocaine drug smuggling ring in the U.S. during the early 80s. Lutiers was able to bring in 10 tons of cocaine into the country over a 4-year period, which was worth over $20 billion. He made himself millions of dollars in the operation. However, when one of the airplanes crashed and killed the driver of a car in the U.S., police converged on the plane and the pilot, and the pilot ratted out Lutiers and the entire operation, bringing it down. For his role in the crime, Rick Lutiers was sentenced to 8.5 years in prison. The story began in the early 80s when the Reagan administration declared war on drug smuggling in the U.S. Colombian drug cartels were hiring Americans to fly their drugs into the U.S. If you've heard the story of Barry Seal, who we have like made a meme about with Sakana, authorities identified Florida as the main entry point for drugs from Colombia. A sophisticated network of radar systems were installed throughout Florida and the Gulf Coast. The government also put up planes in the air which acted as radar systems to catch more drug perpetrators. All suspicious airplanes as well as sea vessels were tracked and targeted. Many of these drug smugglers in the US were very flashy. They had gold coins, expensive watches, and authorities were able to break down the operations and arrest them rather easily. They busted and arrested many different drug smuggling rings and cracked down heavily on the drugs coming into America. However, one drug smuggler was eluding authorities and was bringing in several billion dollars worth of cocaine in the country. Authorities searched but couldn't find the smuggler. This was because the smuggler wasn't operating in Florida and didn't fit the profile of a typical drug smuggler. The man authorities were looking for was Rick Lutiez, a businessman living in Scranton, Pennsylvania, who had brought 10 tons of cocaine into the U.S., more cocaine than any other drug smuggling ring in the U.S. Rick made a fortune doing this, earning millions. However, a couple of key mistakes eventually led to his discovery and arrest by law enforcement agencies. So for like those familiar with like Cocaine Bear, this might have been the planes that they were dropping the coke from. Um Colombia to the US, all the way from Colombia to Scranton as to avoid all detection. To modify a Cessna 310, which can only fly 900 miles. Extra fuel in the rubber bladders in the nose of the airplane. Lutiez takes off from Pennsylvania, taking a direct route to Colombia. 13 hours later, oh man, that would be a hell of a flight. He arrives there. The Colombians load his plane with cocaine. After the loading is done, Rick has 800 pounds of cocaine in his plane. With the weight of the fuel plus the drugs, Rick's plane is 2,000 planes over the plane's recommended. Okay, with the weight of the fuel plus the drugs, Rick's plane is 2,000 pounds over the plane's recommended weight capacity. However, with Rick's upgrade of the engine's horsepower, he managed to get the plane airborne and continues his flight. On his way back, he flies directly back to Scranton using the 73rd Meridian flight route, which is the flight path directly north of Colombia, right up to the U.S. Using this route, he stays completely out of all drug enforcement radars. Over 5 hours into his flight, a Navy airplane picks him up on radar and is hot on his trail. Rick, to ward off the Navy vessel, goes into the heart of a nearby storm. The U.S. Navy aircraft refuses to follow and Rick loses him. 2 hours later, he emerges from the storm and continues his flight inland to Scranton. Once he lands, he gets out the 800 pounds of drugs and scores over $1 million in cash. The cartel is impressed with Rick's operation, has him do regular runs over the next year. Yeah, this is this is wild, man. It does like the Invader and the Invader. Just imagine loading that in your plane. Where is that? Air America on the brink of bankruptcy. Business as Air America. Hold on. Air America forms his own company called Air America, not to be confused with the other Air America. Hold on, let me find which was operated by the CIA and also operated A-26 invaders in Vietnam. But these were like it's just like the Air America Inc. for the role in the crime. The two main cartels were operated were the Medellin and the Cali cartel. Those were by Pablo Escobar and Orihuela brothers. So, a lot of these. And what did U.S. Customs fight back with? So, still in the U.S. Civil Register, impounded while drug smuggling in Brasilia in June 21st. So this was caught in Brazil, this A-26 Invader. Yeah, and my bush plane was used for smuggling fentanyl in America was seized and went up for police auction. You were working for Mari's mom as when she was queen, when she was Fent queen. This was season went up for police auction. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. It shouldn't surprise me as much as it does, but you can see all these like flashy colors, all these, and like these are really pretty civil colors. Immediately put up for disposal. So these were former oil corporation aircraft. Then they were bought out by drug smugglers to smuggle drugs in. Oh yeah, there we go. There we go. There's the there's the Facebook photo that I was looking for. Ownership history and uses are a little sketchy from 1972 to 1977, but they must have been interesting since the aircraft was seized from drug runners by the T.L. Baker of the
Maybe
Potter
we should
Company.
lean into it.
Oh, hold on. Let me skip this ad. Um, I gotta skip this ad. Give me a second. Yeah, the ownership history and uses are a little sketchy from 1972 to 1977, but they must have been interesting since the aircraft was seized from drug runners by T.L. Baker of the Potter Company Sheriff's Department in Amarillo on January 10th, 1977, after a pilot had landed the aircraft on one engine and walked away from the airplane, and authorities became suspicious. Testament to this is that at a particular air show a few years ago, two gentlemen in dark sunglasses seemed rather intrigued by the airplane. Finally, one of the gentlemen approached a crew member and asked what the color had been before the Ranger Wing acquired it, which was the air show managers. Um, when they told it was white with gray trim, they exclaimed, "My God, it's the Gray Ghost! We chased that sucker up and down the Gulf Coast, never could catch him. He'd drop down on the deck and throttle the engines up and leave us standing there." And apparently, those two were DEA agents. So they were used by glowies to evade other glowies and smuggle glowy juice. The commemorative Air Force A-26 Invaders. Yeah, the two gentlemen were DEA agents. This was the Gray Ghost used as an aircraft as a smuggling aircraft. And drug runners, and notice that well, okay. Carl wrote, "Hi, I'm Carl Jenkins. Just sign your guest book. I've been enjoying your site. Here are some 5 pics of 493 I took on the inbound ramp at Naval Air Station, New Orleans, 11th of September 1981 during a fuel stop. 493 kind of stood out from the other airplanes. I asked a DEA man if he would mind me crawling over the plane, and the answer was, 'Go ahead, I think I cleaned her out.'" The story was 493 was blasting at the Texas-Louisiana coast at a very low altitude and a high rate of speed. A couple of fast movers out of Ellington, fast movers or fighter jets, caught up with her around the Grand Isle, Louisiana. The bomb doors opened and a load of pot dropped into the Gulf. He was smuggling weed. The plane was smuggling weed. He was escorted to Naval Air Station, New Orleans, and landed without any further opposition. This took place the last week of August 1981. I was fortunate enough to be passing through a week later and got these pictures. I can't believe they would make he got chased by fighter jets because he was smuggling weed. Yes. He was smuggling weed and he got chased by fucking fighter jets. Now that's one hell of a story. Oh my gosh. But that is not the greatest story told by this aircraft. That is a weird looking forehead for the cockpit. Wound up by Rick Lutez in 1984, and he was a drug runner, later used by his buddy Ken Edenfield, who also ended up in trail for drug trafficking, after a couple of other owners ended up by the Wayne County Sheriff's Department in Detroit. Um, so so it ended up there. So a lot, you have a lot of these. Oh, someone stole the engine cowling off this plane. Someone stole the engine cowling off the plane. Camera mounts. When the Invader was sold, and not one saw the Invader fly, nor they had the engines run. So a lot of these were like near the end of their service history, but they were flying pretty strong. Thought to have been lost during drug smuggling operations. Fitted with an 8-gun nose. Okay, so this one was previously used as a military aircraft, like in an actual combat role. Then it was converted into a civilian aircraft. Um, then it was that was converted into a civilian aircraft as a cargo plane. On March 17th, 1983, the plane was seized by U.S. Marshals in a drug raid in California. Carrying a heavy load of marijuana, the Air Force flew the aircraft to Travis AFB, where it was placed in temporary storage. So they just kept that there, and I guess like they restored it they restored it later on. Las Vegas, lots of thought they've been lost during drug smuggling. See the special feature on the Parker 26. Okay, let me see this one. Seized by the DEA for drug smuggling. The Parker 26. Okay, so so this is a personal anecdote submitted by someone else's. And then this is going to be okay, here's the versatile lady. This is possibly my favorite ever. Hold on, I gotta reload this. I gotta reload this page. I know we are running pretty late, but I do want to like get through this big list that I have because this is a fascinating story. This is something that Wendigoon would cover, and that's like something excited. Like Wendigoon is an Oshi of mine. I know he's not a VTuber, but he is an Oshi of mine, and okay, I gotta reload the page twice. Hold on, give me a second. When this is something Wendigoon would cover in one of his deep dive stories. I need to cover the story of the versatile lady, or because this is utterly fascinating. This is a very specific one. This is a very specific one. Unfortunately, this site, Napoleon 130, does not have the story of the versatile lady. Well, besides like the really hot woman on the front. Yeah, this is all you need to know. This is not related to the drug smuggling ones, but it is related to alcohol. And that is the boss of Bacardi once tried to bomb Castro's Cuba. After many a misadventure, his warplane is on display today. This is the this is a four-gun nose. This is one, two, three, four. Okay, this is a five-gun nose. It's one, two, three, four, five. That's five guns. Yeah, you can see the really pretty lady on the front end. Okay, so I'm gonna read this article on this is from Atlas Obscura. Beverage companies can go to great lengths to keep their goods flowing, especially when they run afoul of international geopolitics. In the Soviet Union, Pepsi accepted a payment for cola concentrate on warships that it could sell for scrap, leading to reams of jokes about the escalation of the cola wars. In the case of the spirit maker Bacardi, the company patriarch went much harder in his vendetta with the communist regime in Cuba. In 1962, he dreamed up a mission to bomb a Cuban oil refinery with a surplus warplane, a machine that aviation historians Dan Hagedorn and Leif Hellstrom call very nearly the first corporate bomber in aviation history. So Bacardi like bought this plane to kill Castro. So this is the part of the reason why like I'm so fascinated with the Bacardi story, especially like in its feud with Havana Club. Today the Bacardi profile is large and easily recognizable: Grey Goose, Patron, Bombay Sapphire. By the time Don Facundo Bacardi Masso started making rum in Cuba, where the friends borrowed still in the 1860s, he had gone through a series of job trials. So this was big in its time. This is they ran during Prohibition. This isn't about Bacardi, although everyone knows it's the Cuban rum company with the bat with like the evil looking bat on it, but it's really cool. But Bacardi. Okay, so here we go. Less than a year after Castro took over the Cuban government in 1960, his administration ordered large businesses nationalized. In 1962, as journalist Tom Gelton wrote in Bacardi and the Long Fight for Cuba, an exiled Bosch. Okay, so here it is. Okay. Also central to it should have been impossible to separate Bacardi from Cuba. Henry Schwegg, Don Facundo's son-in-law, had inextricably tied the brand's identity to the island, even as he opened distilleries abroad. Plus, Cuba had become a drinker's paradise during Prohibition. Many a professional bartender, writes Spivak, moved to Cuba and found work in Sunny Haven. Also central to the brand's identity, it seems, were the ardent political beliefs of the company's lineage of presidents. Emilio Bacardi, Don Facundo's son, went to jail several times for supporting and financing the company's independence from Spain. Schwegg, his successor, was less of a Cuban patriot, but next in line, his son-in-law, Jose Pepin Bosch, actually sent money to Fidel Castro as the revolution took on the corrupt Batista government. Batista wasn't as bad, but whatever. But at the same time, Bacardi quietly began to move essential parts of the business abroad, as was the yeast strain necessary for making its vaunted liquor. So originally, Bacardi supported Castro, but then they made the fatal mistake when they realized Castro was communist. Less than a year after Castro took over the Cuban government in 1960, his administration ordered large businesses nationalized. In 1962, the journalist Tom Gelton writes in Bacardi and the Long Fight for Cuba, an exiled Bosch decided to finance and organize a military action of his own in Cuba. It is perhaps not as extreme a reaction as it might seem. After all, the United States have relented support to the Cuban exiles, planning an attack on Cuba, resulting in 1961's Bay of Pigs invasion, which we covered in detail earlier. But even without the explicit support of the United States, Bosch wanted to strike a fiery blow against his nemesis Castro. In their book Foreign Invaders, the Douglas Invader in Foreign Military and U.S. Clandestine Service, Hagedorn and Hellstrom note that one of the consuming goals of the wealthy exiled Cubans was to fight back, or at the very least, keep Castro in a high state of anxiety, which I think is a very noble cause. In an interview with Gelton, Pepin Bosch's son Carlos related how the U.S. government kept shutting down his requests to start an air transport service unrelated to Cuba and the liquor business. In 1962, Carlos was stunned to learn why when his father offhandedly mentioned the plane I'm keeping in Costa Rica. The plane in question was the Douglas A-26 Invader. We already know, I've gushed all about the Invader itself, but it was involved in Cuba. We already know. So, this particular bomber, a former U.S. Air Force plane from 1945, has spent its career in units based around the United States. Sold off as surplus in 1958, it passed from owner to owner before a Miami-based insurance company purchased it in 1962. Quite likely acting on the instructions of a lawyer connected with Bacardi, who had also contracted 2 Cuban pilots. The mission to bomb a major oil refinery on the island, right, Hagedorn and Hellstrom. Such a plan would arguably put Castro in very difficult circumstances if successful, destabilizing the country enough to perhaps even trigger a counter-revolution. So, the CEO of the chairman of Bacardi bought this plane, this A-26 Invader, to kill. Like, one of his plans was to either destabilize Cuba so much they got rid of Castro, or he was gonna bomb Castro himself, like sending out hitmen in a plane as pilots to bomb Castro. And then so on June 8th, 1962, Gonzalo Herrera and Gustavo Ponzoa, both Bay of Pigs veterans, set off for Costa Rica with a fudge registration and a plan to carry out the bombing in July after stocking up on bombs from Guatemala. Where did he get the bombs from Guatemala? The plan started to go south right away. The pilots landed at a beach in La Llorona in Costa Rica, but had to leave in a hurry when the tide came in, while they waited in vain for their bomb supplier to show up. More the bomb supplier. You can just. I wish capitalism was that extensive where you can just buy aircraft bombs off of people whenever you wanted to show up. More misadventures followed, with both the Nicaraguan and Costa Rican governments circling, suspicious of the motives of the Cuban aviators and their unregistered American bomber. Ponzoa even had the bad luck to run into his uncle, a Costa Rican official who was rightfully leery of what his nephew was up to. It may have been that uncle who notified the U.S. government, leading to a visit from the State Department, who told Herrera and Ponzoa to cease and desist. The pilots left the plane and made their way back to the United States, while Bosch turned to other Castro-defying plans, such as funding the exile group Representación Cubana del Exilio. The plane itself had a spirited second life, perhaps being used for smuggling in Costa Rica, again, possibly for weed or coke, and then flying officially as part of the Honduran Air Force. Gelton in Bacardi and the Long Fight for Cuba tells a slightly different story, naming a single pilot, Gaston Bernal, and stating that the CIA had been notified rather than the State Department. So this is the plane in full. It is you can see the versatile lady. Of course, the whoever painted the nose art of this plane had very good tastes. The Bacardi bomber flew well into the 1970s, but increasingly showed its age. The United States intelligence community wrote it off as a threat after a terrifying emergency landing in 1971, but is rebuilt and showed off in Honduras until 1979. Painted broom handles were thrust into its nose to give the illusion it was bristling with guns. Bacardi bomber did eventually return home to the U.S. after it was purchased by plane and pilot engine builder David Shell. It eventually landed in what is now called the USAF Airman Heritage Museum on Lackland Air Force Base in Texas, where it's still on display. Curator Fernando Cortez had never even heard of the plane's Bacardi connection, but he did confirm that the U.S. government had halted the aircraft mission to Cuba. Once the CIA got word of the mission, they didn't want the World War III to start, he says. Um, in USAF colors, an honorable retirement, Hagedorn and Hellstrom write, 44 35918, the plane's serial number has come home at last. But these days, the venerable plane is decorated with more than fake guns. A blonde pinup, decked out in tropical fabric and flowers, sprawls across the aircraft's nose as an homage to one of the most famed B-26s of the Korean War. And next to her is painted on the aircraft spot on nicknamed the Versatile Lady. Yeah, so this is like the centerpiece of why I wanted to do this. To wanted to read this out for you guys. You can buy them. You can buy them if you know where to look. Oh man, it is genuinely a really beautiful aircraft. So this was this plane as it is, it just represents the spirit of adventure. They would see during the Cold War, from like the 1960s to the 1980s, you would see this. It really it has that sort of that early James Bond type adventure going on about it. You would see pilots flying these into Cuba during the height of the Cold War, and it's just a really beautiful aircraft. You get and these are, I guess, it is technically over. I guess one thing I will highlight is the Sugarland Express. This was a really recent article. A-26 Invader Sugarland Express for sale by Platinum Fighter Sales. So these are still for sale, apparently. This is the attacker variant with the six guns on the wings and 8 guns in the nose, in the wing. And so this is the Sugarland Express. As you can see here, this is literally the Sugarland Express is literally the Wikipedia article version of the where is that? Yeah, as you can see here, Sugarland Express literally is the Wikipedia article image of the A-26 Invader, and this one, yeah, the Sugarland Express. This is here, and it was for sale last year. I think it still might be for sale since it's been 6 months since this was put up for sale. And the ferry to Europe, and that's the history part. 416th Bomb Group. Subject aircraft number 34602 was taken on in strength by the U.S. Army Air Force in 1944. Served during the pivotal period in aviation history. It transitioned to the USAF. And then in 1964, the aircraft entered civilian service. Here's the thumbnail. Entered civilian service, acquired by Jack Lysdale Flying Service in St. Paul, Minnesota. Received the registration N392H. So it is Monarch 26. It underwent conversion to a Monarch 26 by Rock Island, with finishing work completed by Hamilton Aircraft. So they upgraded the aircraft, and then detailed restoration complete with the 6-gun nose. And it is so this was it could be used as a business aircraft as well, or a private aircraft, because it has the big leather seats, the cushy leather seats. I would love to have those seats in general, but they have the wicker seats here. Not the wicker, but the military seats up here. Now proudly listed by Platinum Fighter Sales, the Sugarland Express offers a unique opportunity for collectors and admirers of aviation history to own a piece of the past. So we have that, the A-26 Invader from the movie Always. So we have this. This is the it's such a pretty aircraft, and these are a lot of photos that you get to look. Okay, so. You can't get enough ads. America's anti-drug stuff is psychotic. I grow my own weed and tobacco here. You would if you had the money. Once again, you can just buy them if you know where to look. I guess with the you just wanted to show off the painted butt. Pretty lady. It's a pretty lady on a pretty plane. What can I say? Yeah, you want to have a plane when you grow up. I think every red-blooded man wants a plane when he grows up. It's like it's a thing. It's a thing that you want. Like if you're an aviation enthusiast, especially like everyone wants this kind of thing because again, it's such a pretty aircraft. But I think that rounds it out. Where's that? National Museum of the Air Force. That's you get to see these. Where's the picture gallery? Yeah, this one. Yeah, the nose art. Yeah, Dream Girl. This was featured on one of my posts. This is Dream Girl. This is Sugarland Express. This is the Versatile Lady, and this one is Midnight Endeavor. No, nose art. A little bit about me. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Simpson. This is the author of the Napoleon 130 of the website they've been using to like and shamefully reading off of because he does his work a lot better than I do. And nose art, like yeah, there's okay. I don't think I can show all of these on YouTube. I don't think I can show all of these, but like you know where to look. You know where to look when it comes to these. Yeah, there's the Sugarland Express, and like I'm giving you a very short peek at that. That's it. I can't show you. I don't think I can show you because of terms and services prevents me from showing off too hot things in yeah, it's censored. It's censored on this one, so and on Sugarland Express, so it's fine to show these. A lot of other U.S. Army Air Force nose artists in World War II could have been pinup and cheesecake artists. Yeah, these like again, these are just like they made really pretty planes during the era, and it's just like the F-14 might be my favorite aircraft, at least for my favorite twin engine. It has to be the it has to be the A-26. Inarguably, it has to be the A-26 and specifically the gun nose version. But yeah, anyway, I think that rounds it out. Heading to comment. Oh, okay. And Felix is gonna paint a okay, so I am able to continue talking about this, but I think that rounds it out. I am at the end of the stuff that I prepared, and Felix is gonna paint a neon goth girl with a riding crop and a Elysian collar on his plane. No, you know what I would if I had an A-26, I would paint it in all silver with a blue nose, and right here there would be it would be well, let me find it. Let me find it. There's this guy called Azores on Twitter. I gotta find a picture of what I'm looking for. I need to find I need to find this picture, man. This is I need to find this picture. I need to find this picture right now. We have the time. Um, it's just okay. Come on. Let me see if I can find this. It's very good. It's a very good piece of art that I would put on my plane. Um, there we go. Okay, I know. There it is. There's what I'm looking for. There's what I'm looking for. Those who know who know. Okay. Oh, okay. Let me go find it. Let me go find it. Okay. This is what I would put. This is what I would put on my Invader. It's a variation of this. It's a variation of this, all right? Except it's a variation of this art, but instead but they're horizontal. Dizzy like Sakana is represented as a merman, but with like well, with twin tails and in like a full tuxedo. Dizzy doesn't have her straps, but she is in the tango dress. No, but she is in the tango dress, and the plane would be named two. It takes two to tango, and not it would be not just a reference to Dizzy and Sakano, but it would be a reference to, in my ideal, the plane's the upgraded engines available on the aircraft, and that's what I would put on my plane. That is what I would put on my plane. Oh, I can't show that. I can't show that. But yeah, this is what I would put on my plane. It would be Dizzy and Sakana dancing. It would be called, actually, maybe we could put Dizzy in a bikini for this one. Dizzy and Sakana dancing. It would be called Two to Tango, and it would be a reference to the upgraded engines that would be available. The pick of Silvervale with the whip. Find the uncensored version. There is no uncensored version. This is the version. This is the version that Noel Clover. Thank you, Noel Clover, by the way, for posting this art. The pick of Silvervale the whip. You and your freaky fish lust. I just think they're both very beautiful people, and I would love to put them on my plane. I ship it. Yeah, this is You know what? I'm gonna tweet about this. uh, where is that? No, I wouldn't buy Sugarland Express. If I'm gonna tweet about it right now on stream. Hold on. Why can't I get a picture? There we hold on. Let me go see if I can. No, I can't. Apparently I can't where is that? Sugarland Express. We'll have to find a different one. The Invader, Dream Girl. Hold on. I need to find it, man. Okay. There we go. This is, this is an old post, but if I could post, but customize it anyway. Variation of this art on it. Name under the name Two to Tango. I'm gonna embarrass the artist a little bit. Yeah, no, from Noel Clover. Let me go pull it up from Noel Clover. Either way, meat sound assaulting. Your tweet longer said fucking weave. Shut up, man. Yeah, I am reposting this. I am posting this live on, like, I'm on Twitter so much. I'm even doing it on stream. Yeah, there we go. Anyway, so that's that. That rounds out that. I think that this rounds out, and like my stuff on the nose art and what I wanted to cover here. That rounds out what I wanted to post about the Invader. I love this plane. It's one of my favorite aircraft of World War II, and I really wish it was paid attention more to, because again, this is just such a pretty plane. Thank you everyone who came. Thank you, Rez. Thank you, Terrible Artists, and thank you a lot for Random Perv, because like he like not just a viewer of mine, but I guess a reference to his age. I refer to him as a historical contributor who could comment on the things of his age. The things these were, after all, flying when he was at the height of his career. So you know. Thank you everyone so much. Let's see who we can raid. Let's see who we could do an air raid on. Let's check out our subscriptions. Guy here just got here at the end. Hey Hallowed. I'm so sorry, man. I'm so sorry. You can check it out. Let's see who else is. What if I rated a flesh tuber? What if I rated Grandpa Gaming? What if I rated him? I'm not sure. Amanda Calamity, Witchy, Void War, the Crooked Man. You know what? In the spirit of like having a crew served aircraft, I'm gonna rate into Twitchy. I'm gonna rate into Twitchy. Um, Captain's Log Incident on the Bridge. Let's. She's playing Void War, which is like a space game. Um, that so I'm gonna rate into her. Thank you everyone who came. Otsu love, and I will be height of my career. I my ass. I was jumping out of planes at that. Thank you everyone. Thank you everyone who came, and I will be seeing you all next time. Next time I will have something special prepared, hopefully, by next week. Manual manual raid. Manual raid. All right.